Foreign Affairs correspondent Lara Logan has been in and out of Afghanistan for more than a decade covering the war. Good morning, Lara.
Good morning, Charlie.
Sort this out for us. The consequences, what might happen next?
Well, the first thing that will erupt is Afghan anger over this incident, Charlie. The Afghan parliament is closed today in protest. No Afghan politicians are going to work, as a signal to everybody. But what happens in the bigger picture is that the strategic situation in Afghanistan, the strategic picture gets completely lost in the midst of something like this. It overshadows everything else and it shifts the entire debate. So the Afghans and the US are busy right now negotiating a strategic agreement that is meant to be presented at a NATO summit in Chicago in May. And the big stopping point for that has been control of the detention facility in Bagram Air Base and also night raids. They've just reached an agreement on the detention facility. Night raids remain an issue of contention. And now the Afghans are going to raise the issue of jurisdiction. Who has jurisdiction over U.S. soldiers who commit a crime on their soil? They ceded jurisdiction in the current status of forces agreement. And the next status of forces agreement, which is yet to be negotiated, this issue that was off the table will now probably be front and center.
Can you imagine that the United States will change its position on that?
No. They won't change their position on that. They demonstrated that in Iraq. It was what ended the cooperation between the Iraqis and the U.S. And if the Afghans hold their ground and insist on it, it will be what ends cooperation in Afghanistan as well.
And Larry, you know that they have vowed revenge. What could revenge look like? It's very unsettling, especially following the continued ill will feelings about the burning of the Quran recently.
Well, this scale is on just a completely different scale, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about women and children who were sleeping in their homes, who were murdered. And so, you know, that is even for rational, reasonable Afghans who work closely with the United States, who would be the kind of bridge between the two nations in a situation like this. There are fewer and fewer of those people left standing because this is so horrific. And the Taliban, of course, know how to exploit this kind of situation to their advantage. Even when the U.S. isn't guilty of wrongdoing, they're able to exploit the situation. It feeds their narrative on the country and does their job for them, really. So it won't be hard to whip Afghans into a frenzy over this, and the Taliban will be doing everything it can to do so. In the wake of the Quran burning, there were 6 U.S. soldiers who were murdered in cold blood by Afghans that they were working with, or Afghans posing as people they were working with. And there were mass protests on the doorsteps of U.S. bases. And for a lot of those soldiers out there, that's a terrifying thing. There is nothing more terrifying than a mob that's baying for your blood. And that will be raising the tension significantly on the ground.
Lara, what does this do for U.S. troops on the ground, and could it in any way speed up the withdrawal?
Well, it is possible that it speeds up the withdrawal. Many Americans have lost patience and interest in this war because what they're told all the time is that the Afghans are an unreliable partner and they're corrupt and it's not worth wasting our blood and treasure there. And so many Americans have lost sight of the perspective that many Afghans have, which was one that was built by American voices when Americans first landed in Afghanistan. And they kept saying to the Afghans, don't worry, we're here to help you rebuild, we're here for the long term. And clearly that's not the case, because 10 years in Afghanistan is a very short period of time. The U.S. is not there for the long haul. They've made that very clear, that come 2014 they're going to be gone, and possibly much sooner, because this is, let's not forget, an election year. And domestic politics to the Afghans appears to be driving the American agenda in Afghanistan, something that very few Afghans find easy to understand. But that is the case. So given that it's an election year, almost anything can happen. The president is no doubt going to be under a huge amount of pressure right now.
Lara, thank you.